everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am here to do one of the most exciting videos that I have ever done on my channel. This is going to be my top 10 favorite historical romances that I read in 2021. I read so many adult romances in general this year, but truly historical romances have taken over my life and I have never looked back since. I am just so happy every time I read a historical romance. They're just like the perfect kind of escapism for me, and so this was agonizing for me to make this top 10 list. I am doing a ranking from my number 10 favorite to my number 1. When I tell you that I sat with this list for what seemed like hours yesterday, trying to decide exactly where to rank these books, it's ridiculous. Like, it really isn't that serious, but to me it is, because I just truly love all these books so much. And clearly I recommend all 10 of these books. It's just, I wanted to do a ranking to make things more interesting. I would love it if you would actually pause this video and leave a comment down below telling me what you think my top historical romance is, or what you think my ranking is going to be. I think that that would just be so fun to read through those comments and see if you guys are on my wavelength. So without further ado, let's just jump into this ranking. The first one was quite a surprise for me this year. This is 10 Things I Hate About the Duke by Loretta Chase. This is only the second book that I have read by this author. I read Lord of Scoundrels, which is one of her old school historicals. I believe she wrote that in 1993, and so this one was written only like a year or two ago. And I hadn't really heard anyone talk about this book. I still haven't heard anybody talk about this book, but all that I knew was, judging from the title, that it is based off of 10 Things I Hate About You or Taming of the Shrew. And so this is about Cassandra, our heroine. I mean, she is very much based off of the main character from Taming of the Shrew. She scandalizes London society all the time because she is very opinionated and she is not afraid to voice those opinions. And so basically, her father decides to make this rule that Cassandra's younger sister cannot get married until Cassandra does. And so we have Lucian. This is kind of childhood friends to lovers, or like childhood friends to enemies to lovers, kind of, because when they were younger, they hung out together a lot as kids. And I think Lucian, he's a duke, I think he did something that caused Cassandra to be ruined a bit or something. I can't quite remember, but he has something to make up for when it comes to Cassandra. And so anyways, they come back together as adults. It's a disastrous meet cute. It's just utter chaos. What I love about this series is that it centers around these three disgraces. They are three dukes that they love to pull pranks on each other, and they are just wild and crazy, and the London society has no idea what to do with them. And so Lucian, he is such a sunshiny character. He's just so like extroverted. He's so like the opposite of Cassandra. Cassandra's definitely a grumpy heroine. I think this is just a fantastic Taming of the Shrew retelling, and the banter and verbal sparring that takes place between these two characters is immaculate. It is perfection. So good. I will say this is a pretty low heat romance because I believe there's only one sex scene and it's at the very end and it's not very explicit. So if you're someone that enjoys your romances to be low heat, I would also highly recommend this one. I just love the way that this book also subverts tropes that we're used to seeing from the heroes of these historical romances, because it's Cassandra, our heroine, that is the reluctant one in the relationship. Lucian wants nothing more than to be with her for the rest of his life, but she's like, whoa, wait a second, what? Like, it's an inconvenience for her when she realizes that she's in love with him, and yeah. Clearly, I highly recommend this one. So for number 9, we have Thief of Shadows by Elizabeth Hoyt. This is book 4 in her Maiden Lane series. I did binge this entire series in 2021, so I'm gonna link that reading vlog up in the cards above. It's a very long reading vlog because there's like 12 books in this series, so you've been warned, but this is truly the standout book in this series. I will say that there are other books that I really enjoyed throughout, but this one is incredible. We have Winter. He essentially runs this orphanage. He is also the ghost of St. Giles, which is basically the Georgian era version of Batman. And it's incredible. And so then we have Lady Isabel. She is a widow. And so this also turns into kind of a My Fair Lady gender bent retelling, because in order to get some more investors for his orphanage, Winter needs to be taught about the etiquette of London society. And so Lady Isabel volunteers to teach him, and they fall in love along the way. Winter is also a virgin hero. One of my new book boyfriends, like the intensity with which he like falls for Isabel and loves her, and like there are some hot scenes in this, like all the fire emojis. There's also just like incredible action scenes. That's one of the things that I love about Elizabeth Hoyt, is that she balances the romance and the steam with these awesome action scenes. There's literally this iconic sword fight at an opera house. What more could you want from a historical romance? I will say that this entire series and this book as well, these are darker historical romances, so definitely look up the content warnings before going in. And I also would recommend reading the book before this one, before going into Thief of Shadows, just because you'll get really great context about Winter. But if you wanted, you could also just jump into this one as well. So for my number 8 slot, I do have 2 books taking up this slot. However, they are 2 books from the same series, and I truly love them pretty equally. So that is going to be 2 books from the Spindle Cove series by Tessa Dare. So the first one I have to mention is A Week to Be Wicked. This is so good. This one is about Minerva and Colin. They are opposites in so many ways. Minerva is like this bookish scientist. She's perfectly fine being a spinster. Colin is much more outgoing. He's known as being a ladies' man, being a rake. And so they decide to go into this fake engagement. And basically, if you don't know what Spindle Cove is, if you don't know anything about this series, Spindle Cove is kind of like a haven for women so that they can be away from London society. A lot of spinsters in particular live in this town. And so yeah, Colin needs to be anywhere but Spindle Cove at the moment, and Minerva, she wants to go to this like scientific convention in Scotland, and so they decide to fake an elopement so that they can travel to Scotland together, and all of the hijinks ensue. This is one of those like travel romances, and it's everything that you could want from that premise. This is also so hot because Colin basically teaches Minerva like kissing lessons and other kinds of lessons, and it's absolutely iconic. And the last full book of this series that I also had to put in the number 8 slot is Any Duchess Will Do, and this one has a different vibe though, because it's about Pauline. She works in the tavern in Spindle Cove, and then we have Griffin, who is a duke, and he ends up in Spindle Cove because his overbearing mother, the Dowager Duchess, is just desperate to find a wife for him. And so she takes him to Spindle Cove and is like, just pick a wife, just pick a woman in this town and just get married and be done with it. And so he purposefully picks Pauline because she is clearly not a lady of nobility. She works in a tavern, you know, she's clearly the opposite of him in so many ways. And she is on to his bullshit though. And so it's just so fun because of the way that Pauline basically trolls both Griff and his mother. So it's a bit of like a My Fair Lady plot, because they take Pauline to London for a week to kind of make her over. And also Griffin, I love Griffin. He's basically a rake with a tragic backstory. We love that trope in historical romance, and it's just incredible. Like both of these books in this series, like, they're just so charming and witty. I mean, that's what Tessa Dare brings to the historical romance genre, and I'm just so happy that I read this entire series in 2021. All right, next up for number 7, we have Destiny's Surrender by Beverly Jenkins. I read quite a few books by Beverly Jenkins this year, and her Destiny trilogy in particular is everything. I gave all 3 books 5 stars. This is basically a series that centers around these 3 brothers. This also takes place in the 1870s or 1880s, I believe, in California. The 2 main characters of this book are just absolutely everything and iconic. And this is one of the only books that I've read that does the secret baby trope well. That's not a spoiler because that literally happens at the very beginning of this book. So we have a heroine, Billy. She is one of my absolute favorite historical romance heroines at this point. She is a prostitute in San Francisco, and our hero, Drew, he has been a client of hers for a very long time. And I mean, they pretty much already love each other. They just haven't admitted that to themselves or each other. And so, yeah, basically Billy ends up just showing up on his doorstep with their child, mainly because there's this man in San Francisco that is just out to get Billy. And so there is this villain that both Billy and Drew are trying to deal with. And this is incredible. Like I said, Billy is an iconic heroine, and Drew is one of the hottest heroes that I've ever read about in a historical romance. It's so good. I am so excited to read more from Beverly Jenkins. I think I've only read like 4 of her books at this point, and I need to read more. All right, next up for number 6, we have the first of 2 books that I'm featuring by the same author. The first one I have to talk about is A Notorious Vow by Joanna. This book really surprised me because I had not heard really good things at all about this entire 400 series by Joanna. This is the first series that she was publishing with Avon, but the premise really drew me in. This was actually the group book for one of the rounds of the historical romance readathon, so I will link down below all the information for that readathon, like the hosts and things like that if you're curious. But yeah, this book totally blew me away. We have our hero Oliver. He's an inventor and he's also deaf. He's a recluse. He just lives in his mansion by himself. Then we have Lady Christina Barkley. She has arrived in New York from London to quickly secure a husband because her parents are the worst and they just want to marry her off to the highest bidder. So she kind of annoys Oliver because she just loves to wander in his garden. And then this also turns into a marriage of convenience because Christina's parents are like, hey, you're gonna marry this awful old man. Okay, thanks, bye. And she's like, help. And so Oliver does agree to marry her. I will say things get very serious in this book, especially towards the very end, having to do with Oliver and his deafness and things like that. But the way this friends to lovers marriage of convenience played out was incredible. And I can tell you now, this is one of my top, like, all-time favorite historical romances. That's how much I truly enjoyed this. Like, I flew through this book. I feel like I almost read this in one sitting. I just could not stop reading. All right, we are getting into my top 5 historical romances of 2021. This was really difficult for me to rank these books because I think I truly love them all pretty equally and they all have very different vibes from one another. But I did finally come up with a ranking. So at number 5, we have another complete surprise read for this year. This is Angel in a Devil's Arms by Julianne Long. This is book 2 in her Palace of Rogues series. And I read book 1, which is Lady Daring Takes a Lover. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. So I expected to just enjoy this one as well and give it 4 stars. Like, you know, it's a really enjoyable, like, found family plot. So the main character in this one is Angelique. And she has this very unlikely friendship with Delilah, who was the heroine from book 1. Basically, these 2 people came together because Angelique was actually Delilah's dead husband's mistress. So they decided to become friends and open this boarding house together, hence why it's called the Palace of Rogues series. So one of the amazing things about this series is all the different quirky and interesting people that come to stay at the boarding house. And so the hero of this book is Lucian. He is the Duke of Brexford's notorious bastard son, and he has returned from the dead. Basically, someone in his family arranged for him to be killed 10 years ago, but lo and behold, he was not killed. And so now he is back for revenge against the people that wanted him dead. And so he is staying at this boarding house, and Angelique and Lucian, they both have traumatic pasts. And the way that their relationship starts with like very witty banter, and they definitely don't want to like each other, especially Angelique. She doesn't want to make herself vulnerable to a man when she's been burned by men before in her past. And so the way that their relationship goes from this witty banter to being much more serious and being vulnerable with each other and sharing their pasts and healing with each other and falling in love. And this also has the perfect amount of steam for their story and for the vibe. It's just incredible. I cried several times while reading this. I did not expect this book to hit me the way that it did, and it also made me laugh out loud. When a book can make me laugh and cry in one story, that's when I know that something is truly incredible. I adore Julianne Long's writing style. She almost gives me slight vibes of Tessa Dare in like the charm of her writing and the wittiness and things like that. Incredible. So good. So like I said, this is book 2 of the series. I can't wait to read the other 2 books that are currently out. I am obsessed. So next up for number 4 on this list, unfortunately, I do not own a physical copy of this book, but I will remedy that as soon as possible. This is The Earl Takes All by Lorraine Heath. This book is straight up bonkers and crazy, and Lorraine Heath just does that so well. I feel like only Lorraine Heath could write this plot and make it amazing. Did that make sense? So this is about Edward and Albert. They are twins. And Julia married Edward's twin, Albert, some time back. And Edward has kind of hated Julia ever since because he kind of feels that Julia took his twin away from him. So they, the twins, decide to go on this one last hurrah. They love to go on safaris and things like that. But while they're on this safari, Albert ends up getting killed by a gorilla. And so when Albert is dying, he makes Edward promise to pretend to be him because Julia's pregnant. Julia has had a couple of miscarriages at this point, and so he doesn't want to risk Julia becoming upset and losing this baby as well. So Edward pretends to be Albert and pretends that Edward is the one that died, when in reality, Albert is the one that died. Isn't this crazy? Isn't this absolutely like, what? So this was one of the most romantic stories that I've ever read though. Like I said, only Lorraine Heath could make this story work. And the fact that like Edward literally has given up his entire life to take care of Julia and her baby, and the way that he falls for her throughout is just heart-wrenching. It is beautiful. And I really liked the way that it came to light that Albert was really Edward. I thought that reveal was well done because I was concerned that that reveal was going to happen too late in the book, and it really doesn't. I cried so much, like sobbing, crying while reading this book. And once again with Lorraine Heath, she creates these situations where it seems like there can't be a happily ever after, but that happily ever after comes in clutch at like the 98% mark, and it is just exquisite. So good. Reading this book really made me excited to read even more from Lorraine Heath's massive backlist. I've really only read like 4 books from this author at this point, and there are so many more that I need to get to. So yeah, I can't recommend this highly enough. This book makes me smile, but it also makes my heart hurt when I think about it. All right, we are down to my top 3 historical romances of the year. This was really hard for me to decide these, like the ranking of these 3 books, because I truly love them equally. But for number 3, I went with Then Came You by Lisa Kleypas. This is a book that really took me by surprise because I feel like a lot of people adore Dreaming of You. I can understand why that's book 2 in this little duet, but nobody talks about this book. The only person that I've heard rave about this book is Jess from Peace Love Books. And so I just went into this thinking that I was gonna like it, and boy did I like it. I loved it. I absolutely adored this book. Now this is more of an old school historical romance. This originally came out, I want to say, let's see, I think 1993. Yeah, 1993. So I was a little bit nervous because sometimes old school historicals can be problematic, and this book is messy, but in the best way possible. Like it's so good. So the setup of this, we have Lily. She is reckless. She loves to shock London society. The first scene of this book is literally her jumping off of a yacht. There's like this party yacht that is like sailing along the Thames River. She jumps off of the boat to chase after a hat that fell off of her head. She's just unapologetically herself, but at the same time she has a very dark and traumatic past. So the plot really gets going though because we have Lord Rayford, Alex. Now he is betrothed to Lily's younger sister Penelope, but Penelope really doesn't want to marry this guy. She's just kind of feeling pressured to because he is an earl. There's this other guy that she would actually want to be with, and so Lily decides to sabotage this betrothal. And this is truly one of the best hate to love romances I have ever read. The passion and the animosity behind Alex and Lily's hate for each other is unlike anything I've ever read, actually. It feels very unique because it's passionate, like I said, but still funny. I don't quite know how to explain it. I feel like you kind of have to read this book to understand what I'm talking about. And things do get very messy and angsty between these two. It's definitely not like a perfect romance by any means, but the angst is part of the reason why I love this book so much. I cried. Once again, I cried multiple times while reading this. When a book can make me cry, that is a sign to me that it's gonna be one of my new all-time favorites. And I love both of these characters so much individually and together. And the ending is beautiful. It is just stunning, and it's just everything that you could want from their story. So clearly I can't recommend this highly enough. Number 2 on this list is going to be The Lady Gets Lucky by Joanna Shupe. Let's all take a moment and look at this beautiful cover. Every time I talk about this book, I have to take a second and look at it because it is literally one of the most beautiful covers I've ever seen for a historical romance. This is what we want, publishing industry. These are the covers that we want for historical romances, not dumb illustrated covers. Okay, I'm gonna get off that soapbox. But I read this back in November. I actually read this and Then Came You for a reading vlog where I just read historical romances for a week and had the best time of my life. So I'm gonna link that reading vlog up in the cards above if you're interested in that. This is one of my absolute favorite romance tropes ever. We have Alice. She is a wallflower. She's a very shy person. They are at this house party in Newport. By the way, Joanna Shupe's romances take place during the Gilded Age in New York, but this one takes place partly in Newport, partly in New York. She's at this house party. Y'all, house parties were crazy back in the day. You would literally go to someone's house for like a week or two and just party all the time. And so she's kind of desperate though to find a husband because her mother is just the worst. She is so verbally abusive to Alice and she is just so over it. So she decides to go to this guy, Kit. That's his nickname. His real name is Christopher. But she has noticed over the course of this party that he is a ladies' man. He knows how to charm people and how to talk to people, and she definitely doesn't. She just feels very socially awkward. And so this is absolutely iconic. She like literally just like shows up to his bedroom and asks him to give her lessons in seduction so that she can find a husband to get out from under her mom. And the way that this progresses from a lighthearted friendship and these like sexy lessons to this sweet and swoony and beautiful romance is nothing short of immaculate. Like, talking about this book, I want to reread it right now. I literally want to shut off this camera and I want to reread it right now. So freaking good. This is truly Joanna Shupe at her finest. This is Gilded Age historical romance at its finest. Like, I don't know how she's gonna top this book. I mean, I'm actually a little bit surprised that this didn't end up being in the #1 spot, but speaking of the #1 spot, let's get to that book because I will talk about this book for hours if given the chance. So, my #1 favorite historical romance of 2021 is Again the Magic by Lisa Kleypas. I have to take a second to thank Samantha from Books with Samantha because if not for doing a reading vlog where I read her favorite books of all time, I would not have read this book when I did. I'm gonna link that vlog up in the cards above. Yeah, basically I read her top 5 favorite books of all time because she made a video about them. And this is her favorite historical romance of all time, if not favorite romance of all time. And so I was very intrigued because at this point in my Lisa Kleypas reading journey, I had not read a 5-star book from Lisa Kleypas. So I was very skeptical, to be quite honest. Where do I even begin with talking about this book? Oh my God, okay, we'll set up the plot first. Let's do that. Okay, we have Aline and we have McKenna. This is a class difference romance. McKenna was a stable boy and Aline is a lady of nobility. And so when they were about 17 years old, they fell hard for each other. But Aline's father is a piece of shit. And when he found out that Aline and McKenna were romantically involved, he fired McKenna. And Aline decided that the best thing to do so that McKenna would never try to seek her out again would be to break his heart and to tell him that she never loved him. And so now I believe it's about 10 years later, he is now back in her life, now as a guest at a house party that her family is hosting at their estate, because now he's a self-made man. And so he knows that Aline is going to be at this house party and he is hell-bent on revenge against her. His plan is to seduce her and then break her heart just like she did to him 10 years earlier. I am trash for revenge plots. Oh my goodness, I was like infinitely more excited about this book when I realized that this was going to be about revenge. Like, I don't know what that says about me, but that is everything. So amazing. This also has another romance. So there's two romances going on at the same time. And I thought that they were perfectly balanced because basically I believe this involves Aline's younger sister and then Gideon, I believe is his name, who is McKenna's business partner. And so they're falling in love at the same time that Aline and McKenna are falling back in love. And I thought that Lisa Kleypas truly balanced the two romances really well, because you could tell that Aline and McKenna's romance was the primary romance and that Gideon and Aline's sister's romance was the secondary romance. But yeah, it was just like balanced so well. This was also really balanced in terms of like angsty parts and more lighthearted and funny parts. And the pacing was just exquisite. Like literally everything about this book is absolute perfection. This is what made me a real Lisa Kleypas fan. So I will always appreciate this book for that as well. So that is it for my top 10 favorite historical romances of 2021. Filming this video just made me so happy. You can see how smiley I am now. Like, I love historical romances so much, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I would love it if you would leave a comment down below if you want to tell me about some historical romances that you read this year that you truly adored. I always love getting recommendations from you all, and I would also love it if you would leave a like and subscribe, and I thank you so much in advance if you do, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!